Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the news at 10, broadcasting on Channels Television live from Lagos. And we have a few of those pictures you sent into our eyewitness portal. Let's begin with this one. It's a set of pictures from Mile 12 area of Lagos showing scenes of the violence that broke earlier today. Our eyewitness reporter says some people were killed, houses burnt in the crisis. He wants government authorities to provide adequate security in volatile areas to forestall a recurrence. Next is this set of images from Makurdi, the Benue State capital, showing a young girl. Our eyewitness reporter says is between 8 to 10 years selling fuel. He says the girl should be sent back to school before some undue advantage is taken of her situation. Our next picture comes from Okene in Kogi State, showing people. Our eyewitness reporter says are Kogi Central School teachers protesting an alleged non-payment of their salary for several months. He wants relevant authorities to intervene. We're in Maiduguri, Benue State. Our eyewitness reporter in Borno, beg your pardon. Our eyewitness reporter says a man shown in this picture is only a passenger while the driver is squeezing between him and two other passengers. A second shows students hanging onto a tricycle. He says these acts are dangerous and should be discouraged. So we end in Abeokuta, the state capital, where we see a picture showing students of a polytechnic making soap. Eyewitness reporter says such entrepreneurial spirit should be encouraged. Thanks for sending in those pictures, and know that you too can become an eyewitness reporter for Channels Television. Now, the Minister of State for Petroleum, Dr. Kachiukwu, has announced the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation will be unbundled into 30 competitive revenue-generating subsidiaries next week. In what the minister says will be a major overhaul of the system, the positions of group executive and managing directors will be replaced by chief executive officers who will head each of the companies. The minister explains the decision, which will be concluded within 7 days, will reposition the corporation and ensure its transactions are profitable to the nation.
The Oloibiri Lecture Series and Energy Forum, organized by the Society of Petroleum Engineers, is the 25th in the series of lectures aimed at bringing key players in the oil and gas industry together to brainstorm issues that will ensure profitability and economic advancement through oil and gas. The focus today is on global oil prices and the use of technological advances in hydrocarbon exploration and exploitation. The Minister of State for Petroleum told the petroleum industry experts that an overhaul of the foremost government oil firm, NNPC, is imminent to ensure the return of profitability and stability in the sector.
Within the next 1 week, we're going to be announcing some really major overhaul of the system, one that hasn't been done in over 20 years. The effect of that will be to, quite frankly, unbundle such a huge company into 4 to 5 main operational zones: the upstream sector, the downstream, the midstream, the refining. We're also unbundling the subsets of this corporation to close to about 30 independent companies with their own managing directors. And so titles like group executive directors, which have been used over the last 20 years, are going to disappear. And in place of that, you're going to have chief executive officers.
But for Nigeria to be able to get ahead at these financially challenging times occasioned by the instability in the oil market, these experts say advanced technology in the sector is a must to reduce costs and make profit.
We have seen the U.S. production level remain steady and sometimes even increasing. Despite the fall in rig count, why hasn't the oil price fallen? Simply one thing: technology. They've used technology to make sure they can actually continue to produce at the levels.
Important thing is for us to add value to our crude export instead of just exporting them. So if we do local refining, you have much more products which enables manufacturing industry to use and in itself growth in the economy.
Until Nigeria's economy is fully diversified, the oil sector will continue to be a major income and revenue base. With this in mind, these experts say several subsector practices must be ratified and enhanced, including joint venture structures, gas exploration, oil production and refining chain, among others. Omelogo Nadi, Channels Television News.
The Obafemi Awolowo Foundation has called on the federal government to urgently convene an economic summit to analyze, discuss and proffer solutions to the current economic challenges facing the country. This is part of a communique reached at the end of a one-day symposium held at the Efunyela Hall, Ikene, home of the Awolowos, to mark the 30th anniversary of the death of the late sage Chief Obafemi Awolowo. The event, which attracted the presence of the governors of Ogun State and his Kaduna counterpart, captains of industry, members of the Awolowo family, politicians, among other dignitaries, also called for true federalism to stabilize the polity.
A serene country home of the late sage and outstanding nationalist, lawyer and politician Chief Obafemi Awolowo. 30 years since the death of the former premier of the Western region. The reason these dignitaries and eminent Nigerians from the private and public sectors have converged here. Some of the speakers in their own way describe what Chief Awolowo means to Nigeria.
Chief Awolowo was rightly regarded as a giant in his lifetime. At his death, a Nobel laureate eulogized him as one tree that made a forest.
For a man who has become an icon of good governance, sound political ideology, an advocate of education and economic development, the subject of the conversation here perhaps makes a great deal of sense.
No economic revolution has ever succeeded or will ever succeed, whether green or otherwise, which does not give prime of place to the full development of man. This goes back to education again. So it is intertwined. If you don't develop through education, you don't get economic development.
And as if profiling some of the very first steps toward economic recovery, the co-founder Bring Back Our Girls, Dr. Obi Ezekwesili, suggests an economic conference.
The conversation that should happen should be different. It should be a discussion of the economic productivity of Nigeria from the premise of each region. Each region takes its own economic agenda to that conversation, and through economy we enter into what political structure will best serve us.
After all said, a 12-point communique was issued after the event. The foundation is asking Southwest leaders to close ranks to enhance the region's economic development, and they're also calling for the practice of a true federalism. Shinwakin Baloye, Channels Television News.
The Federal High Court sitting in Abuja has granted bail to former Minister of Interior, Mr. Abba Moro, on recognizance. His co-accused, the former Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Interior, Mrs. Anastasia Nwobia, and the Director of Procurement in the Ministry, Mr. Felix Alabayemi, were granted bail in the sum of 100 million naira each and one surety each in like sum. All three accused persons were, however, ordered to deposit their travel documents with the court. The court, however, allowed Mrs. Nwobia continue on administrative bail pending the fulfillment of her bail conditions. She was granted administrative bail by the EFCC, which was further endorsed by the court on the grounds that she is a breastfeeding mother. Trial has been adjourned to April 27, 2016. Meanwhile, the Federal High Court sitting in Abuja has deferred the arraignment of the former Chief of Defense Staff, Air Chief Marshal Alex Bade, who has been accused of diverting over 3.9 billion naira from accounts of the Nigerian Air Force to March 7th. The court had earlier fixed today for the former Air Chief Marshal to enter his plea to the 10-count criminal charge preferred against him by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. However, the case could not proceed as scheduled owing to the absence of the trial judge, Justice Abang Okun, who was said to have travelled out of jurisdiction. Former National Security Advisor Colonel Sambo Dasuki has renewed his application, asking a federal high court to stop his trial and set aside criminal charges of unlawful possession of firearms filed against him by the government. Dasuki told the court that the federal government no longer has moral and legal rights to continue his trial, having disobeyed an earlier court order. Our correspondent, Amaka Okafor, has more.
Since his arraignment in September 2015 for illegal possession of firearms and money laundering, the trial of the former National Security Advisor, Colonel Sambo Dasuki, is yet to commence. At the resumed hearing of the case, the former NSA, through his lawyer Joseph Dawdu, urged the court to quash the charges against him because the federal government cannot be in breach of the law and still try him. According to him, in spite of the bail granted to him by the Federal High Court, government has continued to keep him in detention, making it impossible to have access to his legal team to prepare for his case. Mr. Dawdu said since November 3, 2015, when his client was rearrested by operators of the Department of State Services after perfecting his bail conditions, he has since been held in custody without trial or reasons made known to him. Mr. Dawdu insists that the order that admitted Dasuki to bail remained valid, having not been reviewed or set aside by the court. As such, it must be obeyed in the interest of justice.
The discharge order is not the real or the main issue in this application. It is that the state should not have an opportunity to prosecute while at the same time being in disobedience of those orders. So my position is, if you make even 1,001 orders from the present posture of government, they will always disobey the orders. So stop listening to them. But if they obey the order today, we'll proceed.
Opposing the application, Prosecutor Dikpo Okpesheye urged the court not to grant the application because its purpose is to frustrate the trial and restrain the power and constitutional responsibility of the government to prosecute a criminal charge. He therefore asked the court to dismiss the application.
I believe in a matter of this nature, the most honorable approach is to allow the trial to commence immediately, and then his discharge or his, if he feels he has anything, then he will plead guilty. If not, he's either discharged after trial or is acquitted.
After listening to the arguments from both parties, Justice Adeni Ademola fixed ruling on the application for the 4th of April 2016. Amaka Okafor, Channels Television News.
We're staying with the courts. The Federal High Court sitting in Lagos is fixed March 15th to give judgment in the 2.5 billion naira fundamental rights enforcement suit filed by Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Ricky Tafa, against the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. Justice Mohammed Idris adjourned for judgment today after entertaining arguments from the parties. The judge had earlier granted leave to Mr. Tafa to adduce fresh evidence in opposition to an allegation by the EFCC that he offered a bribe of 225,000 naira to Justice Muhammad Yunusa of the Federal High Court. Now, reports from the Anambra State government says a former chairman of the All Progressive Grand Alliance, APGA, and candidate of the party in the Anambra Central Senatorial District election, Chief Victor Ome, has been arrested by the Department of State Security, the DSS. While the government claims Chief Ome was arrested at his home at about 9 a.m. today and taken to Abuja, a source from the DSS office in Abuja says Chief Ome is not in their custody. Reasons for Chief Ume's arrest is still unknown, but there are speculations it may be related to issues surrounding the forthcoming rerun election, which he is a flag bearer of his party. When the news at 10 returns, Minister of State for Petroleum says OPEC members to meet in Russia over crude oil prices. More in business news. Please stay with us.